Hey everybody, it's Chloe Thistle and Verse here. I am going live today to discuss what I read in December of last year through February of this year. I know this wrap up is really late. I know last time I tried to do this live, it was a whole struggle. StreamYard has just been giving me issues. I've had issues like having guests on for interviews and stuff, and like I had some issues even doing solo stuff. But like the last time I went live, which was like maybe 6 weeks ago at this point, it literally booted me off, and I was like, "That's it for StreamYard. That's the last straw. I'm looking into using something else." So today I'm using Streamlabs. I'm hoping that goes well. Um, I know in terms of behind the scenes stuff is a little bit more like technical and customizable, so that might be an adjustment, but I'm hoping I'll work it out. Hey Erin, thanks for stopping by. Um, hey Alicia, thanks for coming out. Um, Also, it's hot where I am, so I will have this water that I'm just gonna be sipping on periodically because it's too hot out here to not be hydrating, truthfully. Um, yeah, so I haven't been on my channel like 6 weeks. So like that, it was just like everything was going wrong. So I couldn't, I was just like done with StreamYards. And then I was trying to do stuff in iMovie and like I couldn't even like record things in iMovie or edit things in iMovie. Like it would just like auto quit on me after like 2 minutes. And so I was like, wow, I just like really can't do anything, can I? So I was like taking some time off to work on stuff. That's not creepy, Alicia. That's funny. Not so many people I feel like live out by me. Um, that's interesting because yeah, this isn't a very I don't know where I am is a suburb, so it's not super exciting. But no, yeah, that's not creepy to say. That's cool fact. Um, so yeah, basically technical issues combined with like some life stuff. Life stuff wasn't bad. It was just like things I have to handle, you know. Um, just meant that I was not really focusing on the channel. So weeks and weeks went by, and I was kind of like, this is pushing it. If I'm really trying to like stay on top of this YouTube channel thing, I need to actually like figure out the alternates and get something going. So here I am on Streamlabs, and I hope it goes well. Oh, I got new glasses. I like them. I'm happy with them. Um, and yeah, that's about it. I'm going to. Oh, hmm. Okay, I'm looking at the chat's features in Streamlabs because it's not as easy to reply to people's chats in the chat in Streamlabs as it was for me in StreamYard. Um, as it is. Just saying I see your comment, Alicia. So I'm just gonna get into, I guess, what I read in those like 3 months. It wasn't a busy time for me. It was winter. I did not have energy to be reading, truthfully. I was like, where's the sun? Where's the light? Where's the daylight? That was what I was thinking in those months. So like I think over those like 3 months combined, I read like it's not too bad. I read like 6 books. Um, but a lot less than I was expecting to have read in that time. So, in no particular order, I'm just going to go through it. Ooh, and let's see if I can share my. Trying to see if it's going to be a quick thing to share. Ooh, looks like it might be. To share, like, you know. No, no. No such luck. Okay. I'm trying to share covers for books because it is a little bit more involved in Streamlabs from what I can tell. But we'll see if I can cue this up really quick. This is so odd. Oh, is it here? Is it doing the thing? It's here and it's doing the thing. Yeah, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling this. I'm gonna work on those technical issues when I'm not on the live. Hey, Emma Ray! Thanks for helping me out with Streamlabs. I'm probably gonna have more questions for you later. I already feel it. Erin says, I just came out of a 6-month reading slump, personal life stuff combined with pure laziness. I feel the pure laziness, truthfully. I'm just like, this isn't what I'm trying to do in my free time. I've kind of started reading more now, but like, not like I used to be doing. So, first up is White is for Witching by Helen Oyeyemi. This is like a literary horror novel. It's about this like xenophobic haunted house, and it was wild. This one, it's like this girl, it follows this white family in England, and there's this like young girl who has this eating disorder, pica, where she wants to like eat things that like don't have any nutritional value. Like she's eating chalk, she's eating plaster, she's eating all this stuff. And it's about like how like her family history in general and how her like eating disorder is like straining her relationship with her family. And like her dad's like a chef especially, and how it strains things with him. And also just like this larger like generational narrative around the house that she's living in. This was like a difficult and unsettling read. It is like in a more literary style, so it starts off like very confusing. Like I think there are 4 different narrators in the first chapter, and like it's never named who is speaking or like how they relate to the main story. And after the first chapter, the following chapters is told from like a different character's perspective. And after a while, you kind of realize like, okay, this is who that is, and this is who that is, and like you kind of have to piece it together yourself. I think I was maybe like a third of the way in, where it was like everything was starting to come together, which like wasn't terrible for me. Like it's a pretty short book. Like I feel like it's only like 250 pages or so, so it's like maybe like 80 pages in, which isn't like terrible. But I know I did throw some other people whose reviews I was reading. And I guess why I loved this is one like I finished it and I was just like, what was it that like, is it Angela Bassett, the meme of her, she's like just like stressed. I finished it and I was stressed. I was literally like pacing for 15 minutes. I was like going through my Goodreads friends list being like, who else has read this book? Like what is going on here? It's really hard to explain because like I said, the book is so confusing. But there's something like, there isn't something, it's like very disturbing, like how this house has this like desire to protect, and also the desire to protect like consumes outsiders, is like very xenophobic, like not necessarily good at recognizing what an actual threat is and like what people need to be protected from. And also protection is like terrifying. Like this is not a house I would ever want sticking up for me or like in my corner or anything. It's like if this is what you do to people you love, like I'd hate to see what you do to people you hate. And it was just like so disturbing, especially because you also don't know what's real. Like it's kind of like people have these like accusations and these apparitions that they're seeing. It's like, is this true? Like, is this like something people are lying about? Like, what's actually influenced by the house? Like, what is actually going on? All of it is very difficult to piece together, but the effects are just so devastating and disgusting and unsettling that like it was a 5-star read for me, even though I'm not doing a great job explaining what happened. So the way the house works is that there are like, I think at least like 3 previous generations of women who have lived in the house and who kind of like speak through the house. And like, the house is one of the narrators in the book, and its perspective is like very distinct and very chilling. I just really love the book, really recommend it, but also at the same time I do understand why people weren't feeling it. Alicia says, if you like literary horror, have you read Stephen Graham Jones? I have not. I keep seeing, what is it? I guess it's No Good Indians, one with the deer. And I feel like I've seen his stuff around, but I haven't picked any of it up yet. Um, so I guess that's something I should look into next. Like literary horror isn't necessarily my go-to, but like I do enjoy books that have that effect on me where it was like I literally like could not sleep because like I read it late. I finished it late at night, and I like could not sleep for like 2 hours. So I was like trying to like put together like what happened, like what is going on here, like how do I even feel about what I just read. Like I love being that engaged with whatever it is that I'm reading. Um, so next up, there is Joplin's Ghost by Tananarive. This is another horror. Um, I think it's a little bit less. It's a little bit more gothic, maybe I would say. It's not necessarily like a lot of like Tananarive has written like gory stuff. Like The Good House, I feel like was pretty gory. Um, Joplin's Ghost, I feel like, is more atmospheric. Like there's a sense of dread. There's a paranormal. Um, there are things that are like pretty like creepy and chilling, but it's not necessarily like blood. Okay, now the lights in my house are changing. I don't know how I feel about that. Anyway, but it's not necessarily like blood and guts type horror. Um, and this was one that I also really, really enjoyed. This just follows this woman, uh, Phoenix Smalls. She's a mixed black woman who is like this R&B singer. She started off doing more like indie type music, and but she wants to be like a star. She kind of wants popularity, and so she's like transitioned over into music that her record company thinks is gonna be more marketable for her. But like she's kind of on tour and going places, and her dad's like really big on like Black History sites. And so one day they're in the area where Scott Joplin owned a house, and there's like a museum dedicated to him there. And her dad takes her on like a tour of the museum, and while there, she's like touched by the presence of Scott Joplin's ghost. And it's about like this weird, like romantic, like sexual attraction that they have to each other. And her quest to kind of be free of the ghost. I don't know if it was initially intended to be like a Phantom of the Opera type book, but that's often how I've heard do comp the story. Um, so if you've ever had to learn The Entertainer for piano lessons, like this book is for you. I I did play piano growing up, and I did have to play The Entertainer like a lot. And I just never really looked into like Scott Joplin's life. Like I kind of knew things about him. Like I knew he was a black pianist. I knew he really like popularized the genre of ragtime. Like might have seen like one or two like cartoony like images of his face on like the front of like the like the covers of the music books that you buy that have the music inside. But I didn't really know much of anything about his life. And like I think this novel, aside from the horror part, has like a very compelling like historical fiction piece about Scott Joplin's life and what life was like for like black musicians at the time. Just musicians in general, because some of the stuff that was going on like in the background of his life was wild. Um, like Scott Joplin, I think had like a lot of like artistic aspirations that he didn't necessarily get to fulfill because of the racism at the time. But also there's just kind of like I don't know, like he was basically like a rock star in his time. Like I don't know, like the sex and the drugs and all that was like very much still in the background of his life, but looks very different. 'Cause it's like I'm trying to remember when this was set, like early 1900s U.S. Like just like the different pianists and stuff, would get popular and have a reputation, and they'd be it was mostly men sleeping with like a lot of women, and like stopping at like different like what do you call them, brothels like on the road and stuff, and so like getting like STDs and stuff, and also like what that meant before like there was really widespread understanding of what STDs were and how to treat them. Like very skilled pianists losing like motor function and stuff because I think it was like syphilis that was going around, like that there just wasn't a cure for. Um, like people like slicing each other at these like piano like playoffs. It was just like really interesting and a very engaging way for me to learn more about history. Um, Dude tends to write more like slow paced atmospheric books. I feel like I think of her as like being like very like classic horror, like she's gonna take her time to tell the story, but I personally was still very engaged with it. Um, and I didn't think the paranormal encounters that like Phoenix experiences were very like tidy. Like I think there's sort of explanations as to why Scott Joplin latched onto her and like why she feels this romantic attraction to him, but like all in all, there are still some things that felt like kind of like not neat at the end, and I think that makes sense um, for this story. Like I don't know. To me, it felt right. Like I didn't feel like I needed more explanation for that. Um, so I really liked the historical piece, and I also really liked specifically Phoenix's relationship with her father. Um, Her dad, Sarge, is like very involved in her life, partially because I believe, I'm trying to remember because it's been a few months, but I think he had been a Black Panther and then he'd like been in jail. And so he had missed out on the lives like a lot of his older children. And so when he got out of jail, he's kind of like, I just, whatever happens, like I want to be there for my kids. And so he's like very present in Phoenix's life. He's always trying to give her advice and like help her with her music career. And I think he has like a lot of like respect and admiration for like her talent and stuff. But also, I think there are ways that, but also like the relationship is strained in some ways. Like I don't think Phoenix is ready to receive some of the things he's trying to tell her. I think also she thinks he can be overbearing and stuff. Um, and I don't know. I just really like parent-child relationships that are kind of like tense, I guess. Like not necessarily like like bad, but like there's love, but also there's like more. Like there's kind of like arguments and tensions and things are difficult to explain and work around. And so her relationship with her father gave me a lot of feelings, and I really enjoyed this story. So I'm looking back at the comments now. Alicia says, I would start with Only Good Indians or My Heart is a Chainsaw for Stephen Graham Jones. I'll keep that in mind. I think I'm probably going to start with Only Good Indians just because that's what I see everyone reading. And so I'm just going to be basic and copy them. Erin says, I might read a biography about him and read Joplin's Ghost after. I think that would be really interesting. I think that would probably be like a good experience also to see like what was true and what wasn't, because there were some events in his life where I was like, that were kind of like paranormal, where I was like, is this true? Like, was this something that actually happened and like it's been given this new meaning, or is it kind of like added for effect? Like, I'm curious. Um, so no, best of luck with that. Then next up, I read Drag Me Up by R.M. Virtues. Actually, wait, I want to switch this around. Because there's a book that was giving me grief, and I don't want to end on a sour note, so I'm going to end with books I liked better. And so I'm just going to talk about the one that was giving me grief now. So the book that was giving me grief is called What Are You Doing Here? A Black Woman's Life and Liberation, Heavy Metal by Laina, Dawes. This was supposed to be a nonfiction book about Black women in making like metal music. I think heavy rock in general, because there is some discussion of punk and stuff in here. And I thought I was going to be talking about the author's life, because the author is a music journalist in Canada and also like history and stuff. And I thought it was going to be like a very entertaining and informative read. And I was just super disappointed in this book. Like, it took me months to read it. I felt like every time I opened up the book, I was just like picking at something or complaining about something, because I really didn't care for it. So in general, I think it just was trying to do a lot with a very limited space. So like towards the end of the book, Dawes does say that she had been trying to kind of write like a more memoir type book, and then kind of got feedback that like that wasn't necessarily going to be interesting or going to sell. So like she kind of tried to do more like the historical angle and like a survey angle, and there's just like a lot of stuff, it felt like, and I don't know if that was really to anything's advantage. Yeah, I feel like we're talking about like contemporary or like a memoir or like a history, or all of those could have been separate books, and like I don't have the book with me. I had bought it because it's not something my library had, and it's like pretty small. It's like yay big, and I finished it. I just donated it right away because I just didn't want it in my house anymore. I was so sick of it. But like, if it was going to be like a memoir, I felt like I didn't get enough about Dawes' life, and specifically, I was really interested in like her life, not necessarily as like as a fan of metal, but as like a music journalist who's writing about metal. Because like I know nothing about music journalism. I was really interested in hearing like behind the scenes stuff about like her career path and like who she had interviewed and all these things. And like none of that was really there. And then I didn't feel like the history was particularly well done. Like, there there is a little bit of history there, but like as someone who's like read like a few articles during like Black Music Month about, Big Mama Thornton and I'm trying to remember a few of those, like Memphis Minnie. Like I read like maybe one article about Tina Bell, who was doing grunge before Nirvana. I felt like pretty much everything I already knew was in the history section, and I'm not particularly well read on this topic, so that was disappointing. And organizationally, I didn't think it made much sense how the book was laid out. So I didn't feel like the basics are ever really explained. Like I feel like for a book like this, it would have made a lot of sense to be like, what is metal? What does it take to be considered a metalhead? Like, what are like the core pieces of metal subculture? What are the different ways to be involved in the metal scene? Like journalism, roadies, fans, actually playing the music, on the radio, record producers. Who are the key players and who has power and the money and like how does it all work? And that never really happened. And it just kind of felt like her giving anecdotes and then being like, and because this thing happened to me and a few other people, this is like a big thing. And like not necessarily like explaining, I guess, how that contributed to like, I guess, gatekeeping in metal. So like I'll be a little bit more specific. So kind of starts out with all her talking about her life and being like, I was this a black kid. I was adopted by two white parents in Canada. Grew up in like a pretty white town. Got into metal and felt like that alienated me from my black peers. And then it felt like for 2 chapters, it kind of felt like we're just kind of going back to the other black kids don't like me because I like metal. Like this alienates me from other black people. And I felt like that for like 2 chapters without like much else to it, which wasn't super interesting. 1, because it's repetitive, and 2, like I just kind of questioned the logic behind a lot of the things that she brought up or the arguments that she introduced. Like, what can I give an example of? So, for example, Laina Dawes grew up in Canada, and she's like, this is my experience in Canada. And that experience, and then she was kind of like hopped to talking about metal in the United States, and it really was not clear why, Canada and US were similar enough that these conversations could be had, because the more that Dawes talked about, like, black people in Canada, the more it seemed like these are actually like very different groups of people, like music-wise, like for me, when I think of black people and the United States, I feel like there are like a good amount of like black immigrants in the U.S., but I feel like there's also like people who have been here for like generations. Mostly African American. I'm thinking of like music of choice, probably like R&B, gospel, like soul or funk if you're older, rap, obviously. And then as Dawes is talking about kind of like the culture of the black people where she grew up, she's like a lot of like immigrants from the Caribbean, like people who had been in Canada for really like 1 or 2 generations. Calypso is more like the music of choice. And I was kind of like, oh, this is like very interesting stuff, but also like I'm not sure how we're making the jump from like these two places when it seems like musically, like what's popular and like the entry points are like very different. Um, and I also wasn't sure because it kept coming back to pretty much like the main thing kept coming back to was like I stuck out from other black people because I like this genre of music. And I was very confused why that would deter her from listening to metal because I don't know, for me, when I'm interested in like a subculture or a hobby, it's not necessarily like other people's opinions that keep me away from it. It's like how receptive and warm is the community. Like if I don't know, like I, for example, like anime, it wasn't really weird growing up. Like people liked it, but it was maybe like a little bit more atypical for me in middle school. But like, like for sure my parents didn't really get it and thought it was weird, but like, my friends who I talked to were like really like humped about it. I was really excited to talk to them about it. So I was kind of like, if my parents don't get it, my parents don't get it. Like I'm just gonna, hang out with these people who really like it and keep participating in it. Um, so I was kind of confused about that point, and also it just felt like there wasn't a whole lot of attention actually given to like black people and their interests. Like it was kind of like it felt like streams were being crossed, like with Canada and the U.S. being conflated, and then like there wasn't really a talk or like a distinction, I guess, in terms of like okay, what's the difference between like your parents not liking something and like what parents are up to, which like generationally is like very different from like kids and your peers not liking something, what your kids and peers your age are up to. Like things were just kind of like mismatched and not really explain like why things were similar, and so it just felt like not very deep analysis to me. Like I could kind of like read between the lines and be like, okay, like if your parents don't like something, here's how it's going to affect your ability to participate in it. Like from what Dawes was explaining, metal is like very important, like being at concerts and showing up and being there in person. And so like if you don't have spending money to get to the concert, you don't have a ride, you don't have a chaperone, like which might probably come from your parents if you don't have like older friends who could take you, that would be a deterrent. But like Dawes doesn't really make those connections. It felt like I had to do like a lot of like stuff behind the scenes to try to figure out like why are you bringing certain things up. Um, and then yeah, I just generally felt like the racism within metal was like really soft pedaled, and it was just like very bizarre to me because, or I guess within heavy rock genres in general, because at one point Dawes is like, I think at one point Dawes was like, people look down on metal because of classism, which I didn't get. Like she never really tied into like how is metal viewed as like this, I don't know, like a working class or like blue collar thing. Um, and then Dawes goes on to say like it's weird that like black people have been stereotyped, and then they make these stereotypes about people in metal, and then but then in like the same book, Dawes is also talking about like I don't know, like being worried about like fights breaking out at metal concerts or being worried about being targeted for her race at metal concerts like by white people. And like in this book, like interviewing black metalheads who like when even when they're talking about like white people that they're friends with, like I remember there's one black woman that she interviewed who was like, yeah, I love metal, it's great, it's welcoming. Yeah, my white friends would call, black people they don't like racist slurs, but like they would never call me that, so we're good. And I was like, it's wild that you're trying to sell me on metal with this as your evidence. Like, I felt like I should have been like a pretty easy sell for this book because like I was friends with metalheads in high school, very casually listened to like what is it, rock ballads type stuff. But like the book just didn't hold my attention. There wasn't a whole lot of analysis in it. It felt very anecdotal and like yeah, I was just it kind of felt like Dawes took her experiences and her views and was like, this is just the truth, and then didn't really do much work to back that up. Like from a historical perspective, from like a I don't know, or even just interrogating like, okay, maybe black parents or whatever don't encourage their kids to go into the arts. That was one of her arguments as well. Black parents are less supportive of their kids who like go into music or who like metal, which was again weird to me because like in the U.S. the Satanic Panic was like a big thing of like people pushing against, of like parents especially pushing against metal music. And I thought that was mostly like pushed by like white middle class parents. So I wasn't sure how she was coming up with like, black people are uniquely this or black parents are uniquely this. But like, okay, so like say that they were, are you gonna like ask any questions about why that attitude might be? Or are you just gonna kind of like write it off and call it a day? Because that also, I don't know, I feel like if your goal is to get more people, more black people into metal, these are the kind of questions you'd have to ask. And I just didn't feel like she was asking them. So I was not feeling this book at all. I'm trying not to rant about it because I don't feel like giving it that much of my energy, but disappointing read to say the least, because I was hoping it was going to be like awesome. Like I was hoping to leave it feeling pumped with like a lot of recs for like music acts to check out, and I was just kind of like shaking my head by the end of it. I'm gonna check the comments real quick. Aaron says, that's disappointing. I read a lot of nonfiction. I hate when I feel like I didn't learn enough from it. Yeah, that's like the whole reason why you read nonfiction, isn't it? To learn. And then you get done and you're like, what did I learn? What was the reason? Not a great feeling. Thanks for showing up in Jerry. I don't know if you're still here, but thanks for showing out to support. Aaron says, I've never had friends that like the same music as me. It's never been a big deal. Yeah, like, for me, it's been nice when people like the same music as me. Like, it's been, like, kind of, like, unexpectedly nice when I've been able to connect with people about that, but it hasn't been, like, a deal breaker if it's just, like, me in my room listening to a song that I know that my friends aren't necessarily gonna be into. So that was that. And then next up, Drag Me Up by R.M. Virtues. This is a retelling of the Hades and Persephone myth. It is a romance. Virtues has like labeled it as a fantasy romance. I don't know really enough to go into it, but like I wouldn't necessarily rush to call it fantasy just because of the expectations that like I went into it with. Like when I heard fantasy romance, I was like, people are gonna be shooting like lightning bolts out of their hands. There's gonna be monsters and stuff. Like there's gonna be magic, and like that's not really the case. I don't know if that's gonna be the case later in the series because there are more books coming out in this series. But in this story, it's like it's set in like a fake place, like this town that it is set in, and like these landmarkers are like completely made up. They're all based off of Greek myth. It's not really supposed to be like any one place that actually exists. And like that's kind of as far as the fantasy element goes. For the most part, it seems like they're people with like pretty much modern tech. I don't remember if there's anything that stood out to me as being like unique to the world. So yeah, like I understand why it's fantasy romance is like not set in our world, but also like I feel weird saying it's a fantasy romance, but I'm like there's not really like fantasy elements. But I really enjoyed this one. This one been seeing getting a lot of hype on Twitter, and I feel like it is well deserved. This in this version of the world, Zeus kind of like rules over the city of Olympus. I don't know if the town has like, I think he's kind of like the mayor. Like he has some sort of government position. But Hades, Zeus's younger brother, is kind of like the muscle. Like he runs like a lot. He has a casino. He is kind of like has his finger on the pulse of a lot of like illegal activities in Olympus. And if people don't want to comply with Zeus's legal rulings, then Hades will send people in. And Zeus is kind of a brat. Zeus isn't kind of a brat. He's a very big brat. He's like harassing people and like double crossing on contracts and screwing people over. So like Zeus does not have a good name. But he kind of like blames everything on Hades. So like people are like annoyed with Zeus, but they're like more like fearful of Hades, even though Hades is like the more good-hearted brother. And Hades is kind of just letting Zeus walk all over him until one day he books this, like, what do you call them? The aerialists, you know, like the people who use like the silks and they hang from the ceiling and they do acrobatics. He hires like a group of aerialists to do regular shows at his casino, and Persephone is one of the aerialists, and he falls in love with her, and they have a romance, and that is the story. It's kind of their love story and also like the conflict between those two, about the role of Zeus in Hades' life. And this one was a lot of fun. I really liked the chemistry between Hades and Persephone. I think this was the first romance I'd read where the male character is kind of like the main character. Like, it's really Hades' like inner journey that's kind of like the focus of this book. He's the first perspective we're introduced to. And I hadn't really known you could do that in romance, truthfully. Like, yeah. It's not like I write, but like I write fic. And I feel like if I had read this before I had written a certain fic, I would have handled things differently. Because it was kind of like a fic I wrote where I really liked this male character, and so, but it was also like a romance, and so I kind of felt like I had to like play up the female character's part, even though she's not really why I started to write the fic. Because I was like, I feel like that's just like a rural romance, and now I'm like, that's not a rural romance. I didn't have to do that, but you live and you learn. So I really liked their relationship. Like, they're both, I think, very affirming of each other. I think they see things about each other that they don't necessarily see about themselves, which I think is always like sweet to see in a romance. There are like explicit sex scenes; those are great. They're like very creative setups and stuff, and I was like very surprised, very pleasantly surprised. I guess by all the turns that it took and all like the potential places that could go in future books. So I really enjoyed this one. A very fun read. I didn't really have a whole lot to say about it other than I enjoyed it and would recommend. And then last up, I'll check the comments real quick. And then last up is Mistlefoe by Kimberly Lemming. This is a real short fantasy romance novella, and this is set in a pre-existing world. I haven't read the rest of the series yet, so I was kind of walking into this with no context, but I think each of the books is supposed to be a standalone. But in this one, there's this woman who's a blacksmith, and her father was like going through the local forest, kind of like mining for iron to supply metal for his forge. And the local forest belongs to a demon. And the demon doesn't like people trespassing, so he kind of like cursed all the metal that the father had mined. So like, I think the curse was that like all the metal talks. So like, he like made a sword that like insults everybody who picks it up, and like he's losing customers fast. And so his daughter decides she's going to go to the demon who rules the forest and try to get him to reverse this curse. And the demon reveals that he could reverse the curse, but he's not in a rush to, because he's kind of in this like land dispute where he doesn't really own the forest that he's on. There's this dragon lord who owns the forest and won't give him his land back until he has a wife. I guess it's kind of like law of succession type stuff. Like, the demon doesn't currently have an heir, so like he's not legitimate. He doesn't have a right to the land. And so if the main character agrees to pretend to be his wife while he goes talk to the dragon to get, his land back, then he will undo the curse on the metal. And she takes the cursed sword with her, and they go off to Demon Land. Well, it's the Dragon's Palace, where all the demons are assembling for this like winter game festivity festival thing that the dragon's holding. So this one was fun. It is, again, explicit sex scenes. Interesting setups because there is magic in this world. And I liked the sword sidekick. It's a very funny story. It's not too serious. The sword sidekick is just insulting people and like sort of trying to be a wing woman for the main character. And she was just a lot of fun. And so those were parts I liked. In terms of parts that didn't work for me as well, I mean, this isn't like a super serious story, but like I did want a little bit more from the world building. Like I was very excited to be in a fantasy romance where there's like, secondary world, strong magical elements. But like there's some like relationships between the characters where I was kind of like, this doesn't really make sense to me. Like the story starts off with the demon being kind of annoyed with this dragon lord for like basically holding his land and taking it from him. And then they like go to the dragon's palace and like they're like buddy buddy with the dragons. Like it didn't seem like he was just playing a role to get his land. It seemed like he like actually likes the dragons and is like kind of close with them. And I was like very confused, and all the other demons seemed that way too. And I was like very confused why that was when like the dragon doesn't really have a right to the land. It's like whose business? Like, what's it to this dragon if like he doesn't have kids or doesn't have a wife? Like it's not your business. Like give me my land back. So like little things like that kind of was like threw me because I was like expecting different things to happen with some of the setup that I was given. But it's a fun novella. Final nitpick was that the protagonist is like this blacksmith's apprentice. So like I'm assuming she's supposed to have like big arms because she's a blacksmith. She's like ding 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 with the hammer on the hot metal all day. And like on the cover, she really does not look buff at all. Like I did like a backtrack. I was like, wait, she's a blacksmith? Like I'm a very sedentary office worker, and I feel like her arms were about as big as mine. And I was like, dang. Missed opportunity on the cover, but nitpick. So this was a fun story. I would read other things that Kimberly Lemming has written. I think the series has 3 books in it now, so I might go back and read another one of those. But yeah, that was what I read in December and February. I'm going to check the comments real quick to see if anyone said anything. And it says another book added to the TBR. Glad you're finding things you like. I'm going to stick around for like 5 minutes just kind of chatting with people to see if any more comments come in. And if not, I'm going to close down the live. Yeah, so in terms of what I'm reading now, I'm kind of on a nonfiction kick. Sorry, it's getting hot in this room. So, I read a book like a few weeks ago about how the transatlantic slave trade affected West African Muslims, which I thought was like really fascinating. And I was like, I actually really don't know much about the transatlantic slave trade in general, Africa specifically, especially historically. So I was kind of like looking for more books to read on that, and so I'm reading right now a book, Introduction to African Civilizations by George, I think it's George something Jackson. I forget the middle initial. And it was published in it was published in 1970. And so there's just some things that I'm reading where I'm like, dang, like this isn't gonna hold up. Like there's this whole first chapter on like the origins of humans and stuff and like trace and stuff, and I'm like, I don't need to pay attention to any of this because who knows if any of this is still accurate. It's not what I was hoping it would be. It's kind of dry, and the citation style I guess was probably common in academic writing in the 70s, but like compared to even how the other book I read was written, it was kind of like, I'm not really feeling this. So it's kind of picking up now, and I hope it continues to get better, but it's a slow start for sure. Aaron says, do you listen to audiobooks or do you physically read? I can only read physically. I I can do romance audiobooks like over during COVID, like when I was like working from home like every day. I was listening to author interviews while I was working just to have like some background noise. Like it's weird. Like I need some noise to work, but also if it's just like random noise that I don't select, I get grouchy and I can't focus. So I was doing the author interviews, and then I kind of ran out of author interviews I wanted to listen to, and then I gave romance audiobooks a try. And that was pretty easy for me to listen to while I was working because they were all contemporaries. It wasn't a whole lot of like facts or things to keep straight in my head. If I like lost track of like a paragraph or so, it wasn't the end of the world. So I could do those, but like I really can't do audiobooks or anything else. I got COVID a few months ago, and during the pandemic, basically, it seems like anytime I get sick or have headaches, I have like pretty bad like eye pain. Like I light hurts my eyes. I can't read. I don't know what it is. And so like the first few days that I had COVID, I was like, I can't read. I can't look at a computer screen. But like I also can't really go to sleep. Like I can't really do anything. I need to entertain myself. So I was like, oh, it'll be like The Princess Bride. That was such a cute movie where like the grandpa read to his kid. I'm gonna listen to an audiobook. I'm gonna listen to an audiobook of Master of Poisons because I read that one already. So the audiobook should be like an easier listen. And like it was an easier listen because I knew sort of what was gonna happen already, but like I just couldn't focus. Like the narrator was great. Really no like complaints or anything. It was just like not holding my attention. And I've kind of fallen out of listening to romance audiobooks because now I'm working in the office every day. Um, so I am only reading physically at the moment. Might have some ebooks. No, I do for sure have some ebooks because I have arcs I want to get through, but other than that, physically. So, I think that's been 5 minutes. Alicia says, I love listening to audiobooks when I have a migraine. I need to find something because, like, everyone swears by audiobooks, and I feel like I'm missing out, but, like, I just can't do it. I don't know what it is. Like, even with Master of Poisons, like, I couldn't really read, but I could sort of, like, look at pages and kind of. I wasn't really, like, hybrid reading it, but I was sort of hybrid reading it. Like, I couldn't do it. I just don't know what it is. Maybe it has to be like quicker books. Like maybe if it was like a thriller or like because Master Poisons is a slower paced fantasy. So maybe if it was like a thriller or a mystery or something like that. Or even just like a fantasy, like maybe something by like Nicole Glover. I feel like her writing moves pretty fast. I could do it, but that wasn't working. I can't just do it for any single book. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming out and dealing with the learning curve and just everything during the live. I'm not probably, I am gonna do more lives because I have more. Alicia recommends Cozy Mysteries on audio, and they're short. I'll give those a try. Ooh, no, I should give those a try because I keep seeing all these fun themed cozy mysteries around food, like was it Death by Dumpling and stuff like that. So I should give that a go. That would probably be good. But I digress. Thanks everyone for coming out. I'm going to be doing more live wrap ups now because it seems like Streamlabs works pretty good for what I need it to do. I'm going to try and do like a test run of like having someone else on the live and see if I can pick up author interviews using Streamlabs because that would be ideal. But yeah, thanks for your patience, everyone. I hope you have a good day. We're almost at the weekend, so just one more day to get through.